basic haircuts. Blunt, graduated, uniform, and long layers. Let's get into the information on it. First of all, the way you hold your tools and the elevation of your fingers is how we're going to be getting the different layers. We're going to start with blunt cutting. Blunt cutting, let me ask you this. How am I holding my fingers in relation to the shears? Am I cutting above the fingers or below the fingers?
But we can't see something's in the way.
You better be glad I'm recording. Cause you go on to the crib. What's in them? All right, Kimmy. Okay, you going to the crib. So, you're biting your tongue. What's a picture? So, now we got that. A blunt cut is a same length looking, same length looking. What that means, same length looking, cut below fingers. Okay, when I say same length looking, this is what we're doing when we're doing the even, when we're doing the trim, when we're just cutting the split ends. This is that 0 degrees that we're on. Now, when we're doing 0 degrees, it looks like it's the same, but in reality, the top is gonna be longer than the bottom. Because what we did was we cut it off at the same point, but as you walk the head, then it's going to taper to the shape of the head. It's going to be longer at the top. So let me ask you this: is there a weight line?
Yep.
Where?
At the bottom.
Right at the bottom. So there's going to be a weight line. At the bottom.
Weight line at the bottom.
Okay. Where is the guideline? Where do
At
we
the
cut?
bottom. Common sense.
I got some words. Talk to you after class.
I'm sorry.
No, gotta be. Okay. Blunt. Okay. Now, graduated layers. Let's talk about that. Now, graduation or layers. Also, let me ask you this. On a blunt cut, how are we cutting with respect to the ground? Parallel to the ground.
Which is what, 45 degrees?
Zero. So the thing about this blunt cut, if I elevate my fingers or my tools above 0, it's not gonna cut even. So let's say I call myself cutting it even from here. You know what's gonna happen? You see that? It's not gonna be even when I lay it back down. It's not. So you have to cut blunt 0 degrees, no elevation. Now, as we cut those layers, we cut parallel to the ground. But when we the 0, we cut parallel to the ground. But when we're gonna start cutting layers, Now we're gonna be putting that comb in sideways, and we're gonna be cutting. Is this diagonal? Is it vertical? Is this parallel to the floor? What are we doing now? Diagonal. Okay. Graduation is gonna have a wedge look. Yeah, diagonally, I spelled that badly. Okay, so how, oh, my bad. So how are we, cutting this as relationship to the shears and the fingers? Are we cutting above the fingers? Are we cutting below the fingers? Okay, so we're cutting below the fingers. Except I don't wanna sit still. Sit still when I'm cutting their head.
Okay, I'm gonna be good.
Right, running my money. So, I'm gonna show you guys what's gonna be the outcome of these graduated layers.
So when doing that, how much amount of hair should you get?
It depends on how much the client wants cut off.
I mean, as far as like say, so you got your guideline and you go traveling around, going around, but like can you get like a
So
fixed
everything comes from that guideline.
Mhm.
When your client tells you, I want a 1/2 inch off, that means you're gonna take a 1/2 inch off the bottom, and then you're gonna take a 1/2 inch off those layers. And what happens is, that perimeter, that 0, that's your guideline. That's so that you can keep your haircut even. Because you can't really measure the hair. You can, because the measurements are right on the comb. But it would be hard, Alexis, it would be hard to balance out the haircut if I didn't start at 0 all the way around. So that's the guideline for the haircut, because I'm walking 45 degrees from how much the client told me they wanted cut off. Very good question. That's why I like to do layers. When I'm doing a fade, it's up to me how far I take the line up. It's so much guesswork in the blend. There's no guesswork when you pull out these shears. A client can't turn around and say you took off too much. No, no, no. I took off exactly what you told me to cut. I asked you several times if this was okay. I showed it to you when I got finished. This is what we agreed on. That's what we agreed on. Okay, so I cut this at 45. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna walk it up just a little bit more so that you guys can see really good what those graduated layers are gonna look like. So I'm just walking it up. Walk it up. Into the thick of it. And they say on TikTok. Okay. Now, almost ready. Let me ask you this. Where are we cutting this? Are we cutting this at the bottom? Or is this the interior section of the hair?
Interior section of the hair.
Okay. How do we find 45? Well, 90 is straight out. 45 is gonna be half of that. Shout out to my cameraman and Sid the barber. Okay, now let's get into this information now that we can see. Now, graduation. Now, let me ask you this. Is there a weight line? There's a weight line. You don't see this weight? The weight gonna be right at the top of the layer. The weight line gonna be right at the top of the layer. And the reason being is the top is gonna be way longer than the bottom. So this is called graduated layers because the hair is going to gradually increase in length towards the top. There's the word graduation. It's gonna gradually increase in length towards the top. It's steadily going to be getting longer. And that long hair at the top is what's gonna create that heavy weight line right at the top. Graduation. Graduation. So, any questions about graduation and why it's called graduated layers? Because that hair is gradually increasing in length. Okay, so 90 degrees. This is uniform layers. This is uniform layers. Now, 90 degrees again, that's straight out from the head. That's straight out from the head. Okay. Straight up and down. Am I cutting below the fingers?
Above.
Cutting above the fingers. Now, with relationship to the ground, how are we now cutting this? Is it vertical? Definitely. So this is cut vertically. Is it at the bottom? Is it at the top?
No.
Interior. It's cutting the interior of the hair. Okay. as we walk these layers, I don't need to cut the bottom. I'm gonna let that fall out of my hand, it was already cut at 45 degrees.